In previous lessons, we learned how to take off and navigate, but what goes up must come down. In this lesson, we'll go over the basics of landing at an airfield in visual flight rules conditions using a straight-in approach. This will also be useful for the later instrument flight rules landing lesson. I currently have the lesson paused as I want to first outline the basics of an airfield VFR straight-in approach. Before flying this lesson, please make sure you are familiar with the HUD symbology as described in the manual and first lesson. Press spacebar to continue.
Test. Boom. Test. Actually, I think it might be working now.
We will start the approach 11 miles out at 3,000 feet barometric and 260 knots on approach to runway 07 Ecobaletti. Once at 5 miles, you will be at 1,500 feet, and this will place you on a 3-degree glide path to the runway. To measure your glide path angle, reference your velocity vector on the HUD in relation to the pitch ladder. A 3-degree flight path is standard for an F-A-18 landing. For a straight-in approach, we will keep the HUD showing barometric altitude. This will also be true for IFR landings. Press the spacebar to continue.
After the lesson is unpaused, reduce your throttle to idle and fly through the gates ahead. Once your airspeed is below 250 knots, Lower the landing gear by moving the landing gear control handle down. Do this by left-clicking the handle or by pressing the G key. Also lower the flaps to full down by moving the flap switch in the down full position, either by left-clicking on the switch twice or pressing left control F. Once the gear and flaps are down, keep flying through the gates and get the aircraft to an on-speed angle of attack. This is the proper AOA that will achieve the correct hook angle to catch the target wire of the carrier. You will want an angle of attack of 8.1 degrees, which will place the velocity vector on the HUD in the center of the E bracket. Additionally, your angle of attack target of 8.1 degrees is indicated by the AOA indexer lights to the left of the HUD frame. When at the on-speed AOA, the center yellow circle will be illuminated. Use the throttle to adjust your glide path and pitch trim to adjust AOA when the flaps are down. Use the first part of this flight to practice stabilized on-speed flight. Press spacebar to continue. When you're ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. Being below 250 knots, go ahead and lower your landing gear and drop the flaps to full. Reduce your airspeed by setting the throttles to idle. You may also wish to extend your speed brake by using the speed brake switch on the right throttle grip or by pressing left shift B to get slower more quickly. Note the SPD BRK light on the instrument panel when the speed brake is extended. As you slow below 140 knots, retract the speed brake by using the speed brake switch or pressing left control B. Adjust the throttle and stick trim to maintain 8.1 degrees of angle of attack. Velocity vector inside the E bracket. Use the gates as a reference for your glide path by keeping the velocity vector in the center of the next gate. At this point, you should be on speed with an angle of attack of 8.1 degrees, indicated by the velocity vector in the center of the E bracket on the HUD. Use throttle input to adjust your glide path such that the E bracket is positioned over the runway threshold. Use pitch trim to keep on-speed AOA. You should now be on a 3-degree glide path down the runway. Maintain on-speed AOA, and your glide path should be aligned with the runway threshold. Maintain on-speed AOA and fly the aircraft onto the runway with a vertical velocity of no more than 750 feet per minute, as displayed over the HUD altitude indication. Do not flare. Once the nose wheel comes down, use the rudder to keep the aircraft centered down the runway, and use the wheel brakes to bring her to a halt.
Moving like a basket.
In previous lessons, we learned how to take off and navigate, but what goes up must come down. In this lesson, we'll go over the basics of landing at an airfield in visual flight rules conditions using a straight-in approach. This will also be useful for the later instrument flight rules landing lesson. I currently have the lesson paused as I want to first outline the basics of an airfield VFR straight-in approach. Before flying this lesson, please make sure you are familiar with the HUD symbology as described in the manual and first lesson. Press spacebar to continue.
We will start the approach 11 miles out at 3,000 feet barometric and 260 knots on approach to runway 07 Equipoleti. Once at 5 miles, you will be at 1,500 feet, and this will place you on a 3-degree glide path to the runway. To measure your glide path angle, reference your velocity vector on the HUD in relation to the pitch ladder. A 3-degree flight path is standard for an A-18 landing. For a straight-in approach, we will keep the HUD showing barometric altitude. This will also be true for IFR landings. Press the spacebar to continue.
After the lesson is unpaused, reduce your throttle to idle and fly through the gates ahead. Once your airspeed is below 250 knots, lower the landing gear by moving the landing gear control handle down. Do this by left-clicking the handle or by pressing the G key. Also lower the flaps to fold down by moving the flap switch in the down fold position, either by left-clicking on the switch twice or pressing left control F. Once the gear and flaps are down, keep flying through the gates and get the aircraft to an on-speed angle of attack. This is the proper AOA that will achieve the correct hook angle to catch the target. Fire of the carrier. You will want an angle of attack of 8.1 degrees, which will place the velocity vector on the HUD in the center of the E bracket. Additionally, your angle of attack target of 8.1 degrees is indicated by the AOA indexer lights to the left of the HUD frame. When at the on-speed AOA, the center yellow circle will be illuminated. Use the throttle to adjust your glide path and pitch trim to adjust AOA when the flaps are down.
why Dawn is trusted to save wildlife affected by oil. Dawn Platinum cleans to the squeak.
I get to love you.
Shop K's Valentine's Day sale and save 30 to 40% on everything only at K.
The beach has always been there for us. So it's time.
And how terrible he was in that interview. And trust me, from my travels in recent months, that is a giant concern of the American people. They didn't need the special counsel's report. Democrats, Republicans, and independents, not just Republicans, asking questions, is he up to the job? When I said he's going to give a statement in Washington, one of the things we hear on the road is, where is he? People want to see him out traveling the country more. Take the number out of it. Don't make it about his age. Make it about his vitality. Is he up to the job physically? It's the most demanding job in the world, many believe. And I covered the White House for 10 years. It is a demanding job. Is he up to it? The other thing I would point out is that Joe Biden's calling card when he ran against Donald Trump was, I'm an adult. I won't do all these things. I know how it works. I'm the national security expert. I'm the Washington expert. I know the rules. Well, this report says he blew through a lot of very important rules. So it undermines his credibility as Donald Trump is chaos. I'm the guy who knows how to do it right. And so that's part of this as well. He's the incumbent president. He's trying to say, don't bring Donald Trump back. Don't bring all that chaos back. So both on the facts of the report and the judgment about his abilities, it's damning. And so the president's going to start this conversation in Washington tonight, deliver that statement. I would make the case that if he really wants to bend the arc, especially on the is he up to the job question, which is a real and big one out in the country, he's not going to answer that in Washington. He's only going to answer that if people see him consistently out on the road.
And that's exactly what you were saying, Basil. But
I think they scheduled this so hastily because they realized the narrative on this report was getting away from them. He has to now and throughout the entire campaign demonstrate that he has the mental acuity to be president, which people, as John said, don't currently believe. I would say he's probably not happy about this report. He's probably not happy about the news coverage. If we see angry Biden tonight, then this would have been a huge mistake. I think he needs to go out, acknowledge the report, and I don't know how you pivot out of it tonight, but angry Biden and rampaging at this report and this independent counsel, that would be a mistake.
Sure.
Go ahead.
But he's not, look, we don't have a rage tweeting problem with Joe Biden. I think he needs to come out and show vigor, I think, to John King's point.
Yes, the word vitality and vigor now we have used.
Clarity, clarity. He should take questions. And then I think really lean into, ultimately, his best argument is his record. He's been an effective and consequential president, and the contrast couldn't be clear with Donald Trump. With this incident as well. This shows sloppiness with classified documents. That's unacceptable. He cooperated in contrast with President Trump, but he didn't show a malicious disregard for cooperating with law enforcement. And that seems to be a fundamental difference.
It is, though, Basil, interesting. I suppose when you say this, we were talking about earlier. All right, he's glad he's not charged. But you don't, sometimes you say, well, wait a minute, am I really? To your point. I mean, if the reason isn't because, one of the main reasons is because you look bad on the stand because you don't remember what you did.
Right. I get it. Look, if you're Donald Trump, you're going to turn around and look, samesies. I did it, you did it, let's just clear the table and start from scratch, right? Because you can't, the finger pointing's over. So a lot of what I think we'll see tonight is Joe Biden trying to reset that conversation. And to John King's point, if the voter sees this as some kind of equivalent, then Joe Biden's got to find a way, and Democrats have to find a way to make it not so, to make Donald Trump's crimes, the potential crimes, greater than anything that Joe Biden did. But the problem is that this language about his abilities is so baked in to Democrats, as was said before, to Democrats and independents, let alone Republicans, that he's got to be able to go out and just talk about other issues that people care about in places where they're responsible.
And John, you've seen him over many years in many roles, but you have him walking into a room here right now at a podium in Washington, right? But he's really addressing the American people. He's choosing to do it at 7:45 p.m. Now it's 7:50, so any minute here. There are going to be reporters in the room, so he is going to have a live audience. Better for him than being in a room just with a prompter. Certainly he does better with people around him. I've seen that doing a town hall with him. But to make this that quick, I mean, they're writing a speech, they're putting it, what do you think is actually going on here? because they do know. And the problem is when everyone's looking at you to do something specifically wrong, that's sometimes when you make the mistake because you're so focused on not making them.
Better get that on screen.
Thousands of miles away from your national territory. Don't you have anything better to do? You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt, more than $33 trillion. You have nothing better to do, so you should fight in Ukraine? Wouldn't it be better to negotiate with Russia? Make an agreement, already understanding the situation that is developing today? Do the United States need this? What for?
The special counsel released his findings today. Looking at my handling of classified documents. I was pleased to see he reached the firm conclusion that no charges should be brought against me in this case. This was an exhaustive investigation going back more than 40 years, even in the 1970s when I was still a new United States Senator. The special counsel acknowledged I cooperated completely. Not throw up any roadblocks. I sought no delays. In fact, I was so determined to give the special counsel what he needed, I went forward with a 5-hour in-person interview over 2 days on October the 8th and 9th of last year, even though Israel had just been attacked by Hamas on the 7th and I was very occupied. It was in the middle of handling an international crisis. I was especially pleased to see special counsel make clear stark distinction and difference between this case and Mr. Trump's case. The special counsel wrote, and I quote, "Several material distinctions between Mr. Trump's case and Mr. Biden's are clear," continuing to quote, "Most notably, after giving multiple chances to return classified documents to avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it. In contrast, went on to say Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his home, sat for voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation." End of quote. I've seen the headlines since the report was released about my willful retention of documents. These assertions are not only misleading, they're just plain wrong. Page 215, if you had a chance, I know it's a thick document. On page 215 of the report of the special counsel found the exact opposite. Here's what he wrote. "There is in fact a shortage of evidence that I willfully retained classified materials related to Afghanistan." On page 12, the special counsel also wrote, or in other documents, "The decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward. The evidence suggests that Mr. Biden did not willfully retain these documents. The evidence who said I did not willfully retain these documents. In addition, I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, was they their damn business? Let me tell you something. Somebody would comment, I wear since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady. Every Memorial Day we hold a service remembering him, attending my friends and family and the people who love him. I truth is I sat for 2 days of events, going back 40 years. At the same time, I was managing international crisis. Their task was to make a decision about whether to move forward with charges in this case. That's their decision to make. That's the council's decision to make. That's his job. They decided not to move forward. For any extraneous commentary, they don't know what they're talking about. It has no place in this report. The bottom line is the matter is now closed. We can continue what I've always focused on, my job of being President of the United States of America. Thank you, and I'll take some questions.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I'm the president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally out.
Is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad I let you speak. That's what it is. My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. Well, I guess I just forgot what was going on.
Mr. President, voters have concerns about your age. How are you going to assuage that? Do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns about your age?
Only by some of you.
Mr. President, do you take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material?
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were removed not by me,